05.
Good.
Thank you. I want to welcome two board members. One, Kyle Muncy. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us as our newest member of the governance committee. Thank you for coming on board. We're delighted to have your input as both board member with some experience, as well as the president and member of the executive committee. It's great to have your additional input. And today we've invited Emily Wicks to join us as well. Thank you, Emily, for coming. We'll get to your point in a moment, but first I just want to check to see, Cynthia, is there public comment for us to consider today?
No public comment.
No public comment. Excellent. We'll move on to the minutes from our last meeting is September 27th. Should be included in your packet. Oh, welcome, Diana. Thank you. Glad you can join us too. We just got started. We're reviewing the minutes from our last meeting. If everyone's had a chance to review those, I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Betsy, second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Frank, I missed the second.
Oh, I thought I saw a movement down here. Was it? I thought I'm used to the hand signals. It's like steal third base or it's a second. I think it was Diana.
Okay.
Thanks. Now, thank you for that. Check in with board members. So, Emily, I just want to set this up just a little bit. The governance committee is responsible, for, certainly making sure that we have the rules, the review of the bylaws, but also that we're nominating people for different positions, including board membership. And, we're in charge of keeping the board members engaged as well. And so we thought it would be helpful because we see a good portion of the board comes on these governance committee meetings, but it's not all, right? And there's other assignments on other committees or task forces. And we just want to make sure that we were taking a moment to check in with all of you. Now, Cynthia, you said that Mario, it was also invited to this meeting, but he might be running late.
Yeah, that's a message. He spoke to Denise when Kathleen and I were in a meeting, but that's my understanding. So I think he's going to try to get on as soon as he can.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, maybe we'll start, if you don't mind, Emily, just sort of an introduction. This is, committee meetings are a little bit more informal. It's more of a discussion, and it's partly just checking in on you and what your experience has been on the board. If you could maybe give just an introduction about your role and sort of the different assignments that you've had, committee or task forces, and just your feedback for the group.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think feel like I started in unique circumstances, so maybe I haven't had like a true experience of being on the board just quite yet, and I think maybe that's made it. At times, I feel like I'm playing catch up a little bit, but also this is my first board that I've ever been on, or at least like official board. I know I work with Betsy on the Ballard Institute board, but that's more of a, an advisory type thing.
And she does a good job there too, Frank.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So it's been kind of unique in that I've only met all of you in person a few times, but I've been, I guess my main role is chairing the Celebrate Mansfield committee, which has been really wonderful, especially because I've been involved in that festival for so long as the Ballard Institute, but never worked on it behind the scenes. So it's been kind of really unique to take that shift and see it, being organized from the start. Sometimes I wish that I could he be even more useful to the Mansfield Downtown Partnership staff with the Celebrate Mansfield Committee? Because I feel like Denise and the whole team really take on the bulk of the work. But I tried to step in as much as possible and kind of help where I can, especially kind of with the day of the event, making sure to be there all day to kind of do whatever Denise needs. So that's really been kind of my main role, but I've tried to attend some of the other aspects, including, going to a few of Prabhas's, I can't remember what they're called, Prabhas, but your presentations with the group of business students, and trying to give feedback and helping out at some of the Celebrate Mansfield events, like the summer shows.
Well, your role as chair, do you feel like you have the support that you need, certainly from staff? But what about like for other board members?
They're so great.
What did you see as participation in this year as volunteers, other volunteers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were almost overwhelmed with volunteers the day of. I think actually I think it was actually very amazing to see kind of the turnout of support and wanting to help. I mean, for the committee members themselves, they've been really great. Including Kyle. I'll be sad to lose him on the Celebrate Mansfield committee, because he's been really kind of key, especially in kind of connecting with UConn to make the event even more successful. But then other people like Jenny and Sarah, we couldn't have made the festival happen without them. I think, Sarah especially is very connected within the town. So that's been very helpful in her finding resources within her department to kind of make it possible. But then, I mean, the staff were amazing. So Denise and Cynthia and Kathleen are really the ones that made the event happen and made it what it was this year. So I felt tremendously supported. If anything, I was trying to offer my support as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Are there any opportunities for I'm thinking of the board members to take advantage, and use the Celebrate Mansfield more for engagement of our board? Do you see any roles or things that we should be asking board members to step into?
I mean, I think we got a lot of turnout from board to volunteer, but I think it wouldn't hurt to engage with people more and encourage them to get involved in the planning in the day of. I mean, I think we were even talking, I mean, we're going to have our debrief meeting this week, so I'll be interested to hear what other people have to say. But I think there was kind of questions around, if I remember, the board booth and kind of what role should that play, and how should we make that work. And I think it's important for the board and the partnership to have representation at the festival. I don't think people in the town necessarily know who organizes the festival, so I think it's important to do that. But is there a way to make that booth more engaging, to bring people in and encourage them to stop at the booth and have that conversation? Betsy.
I apologize for not taking part this year, but it was strictly because of COVID and because I'm so old.
No,
I didn't take any chances, So
I completely understand.
I've been laying low for the last, almost 2 years now, staying away from groups and so forth. But Cynthia will tell you, I participated in the festival from when we were thinking about the festival. Up until I think this was the first year I missed, Cynthia, maybe the second year. But hopefully next year we'll be back to somewhat normal, and I can help out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, being on the committee, I heard all about kind of your connections to the town. The word on the committee was, that you would often reach out to the businesses because you knew so many people. And I think that's an example of maybe how the board might be able to assist if the committee doesn't necessarily have those connections. Like, I know for myself, I have some connections that I've made with the town through the Ballard Institute, but I don't personally live in Mansfield. I'm still fairly newish, but not really, but so I didn't necessarily have a lot of personal connections. And that might be somewhere where the board could also assist, even if they can't come on the day of the festival. How could we use people's connections to really publicize the event or get more support?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Any other questions from the committee for Emily while we've got her? Diana?
Emily, just, and you'd mentioned losing Kyle, you know, you wouldn't have the connections, but is that the type of thing that, you know, Kyle has connections, you can specifically, do you think it would help to specifically speak to people on the board about, you know, kind of have lists of, oh, I'm in the schools, is there something I can do in the schools, you know, is
Yeah.
Kyle can do something that, even if we're not on the committee, if there's specific things that come up, that we can kind of target people on the board and say, oh, this would be great if you do this, reach out. Is that something?
Yeah, I
that-
think that's actually a really great idea because I mean, Kyle, you know, you offered so much, including your wit and sense of humor, but also, you know, I think Kyle, your role is kind of working between UConn and other entities. So he had a lot of connections with like the bookstore or different departments at UConn. And I have UConn connections too, but not in the same way as Kyle. So I think it is interesting. Yeah, maybe within the Celebrate Mansfield committee, identifying kind of what areas do we need to be able to connect with and when, and who could help us do that, whether it's someone on the Celebrate Mansfield committee or, you know, is it reaching out to someone like Kyle to say, hey, can you connect with so-and-so?
Mhm.
That connection, Emily, is so important because a couple of years when we didn't have that connection as well as we do now, we really noticed it, didn't we, Cynthia? The lack of connection with UConn. So that's extremely important. The idea of us being one community and not two separate entities is the message we try to get out each year at the Celebrate Mansfield Festival.
Yeah,
One of
and I feel like, I mean, I don't know if it was different this year, but I really, maybe it was because I was sitting in a different area, but I feel like I noticed more of a student population there and like more of a diverse population than normal. I don't know if there's anything to back that up, but it was just interesting, at least for me, to be seeing so many students. So it did feel like more of a collaboration between the university and the town.
That's good. Good for you.
How are you doing on filling the committee? Do you have needs for additional volunteers and do you recruit for that role or do you look to us to assist or the staff?
That's a
to
good
assist?
question. I haven't really had to fill a committee spot yet. Kyle will be my first vacancy. So
And did Amanda step off too?
yeah, I guess Amanda stepped off too. So now we have 2 vacancies. So yeah, I would say that we need to fill it because really right now it's me, Sarah, and Ginny, I think. So I know we're having a meeting this week. I'd like to bring that up with everyone to see if they have suggestions, but I do think if there are volunteers from the board that are interested, maybe that's a possibility too. But yeah, this is the first time that we have vacancies to fill. So this is new to me.
Yeah, maybe we can help with trying to help some coordination of this. Certainly we are just starting to build out a pipeline for potential volunteers. And, you know, we're thinking about the board, but also other roles too. And, you know, in many ways we see experience of people getting, you know, working on the festival as a way of sort of learning more about our mission and maybe aspiring towards being on the board at some point too. So Cynthia, maybe we can work with Emily to, once she's had her debrief meeting and they find out what their needs are, what they're looking for additional volunteers, we can put our heads together and help coordinate that.
Yeah, and I would say, I think to Diana's point, and I don't know if she was referring to herself, not necessarily on the committee, but I think the school connection, having somebody from the school, since we have such a family, it's been a pretty family-oriented event, would be nice if there was somebody. And as you said, Frank, a lot of ways that we bring people onto the board is they kind of start at the committee level and then flow into the board at some point. It's just seems to be a nice transition. And not a necessary one, but yeah, I think somebody at the schools would be great.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is there anything else we haven't covered, Emily, that you want to make sure that we're thinking about?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we want to make sure that we're providing some support. Oh, Cynthia, did you have?
I'm sorry, from a staff level, Emily, are you, in terms of getting materials and any information that you need from me or Kathleen or Denise, do you feel like you're getting in a timely basis? Is there additional information that you need?
No, you all have been wonderful. Yeah, you guys are great at getting updates out. I always feel like I have the information that I need going into the meetings.
Great. That's terrific. Thank you. And, you know, Emily, just know that you've got all the members, you know, on this call, plus the other board members who are very supportive of you in your role, and just this terrifically successful event this year that, you know, we really needed that. It really
Yeah.
helped our community.
Yeah,
So
well, thank you.
but as your role is, you know, leading a committee like that, you know, whatever resources you need or acknowledgement of volunteers or you name it, just come to us and you'll see what we can do to support you in that role.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your input. If Mario can join us in a little bit, you know, we'll have some similar questions for him too. Emily, if you want to stay through the meeting, it shouldn't go, it's a pretty quick meeting this week. If you want to stay, you're welcome to, but if you have other things you need to jump off on, feel free to exit too.
I can stay on and stay muted, so if there's any questions or anything that comes up, I'll be here.
Okay.
Thanks.
Or you can ask Mario questions when he
Oh,
comes
okay,
on.
oh, good, okay.
If we could jump, let's see, we have December, we have there's a item number 5. Discussion of December social get together with board and committee members. So typically, you know, we've had our in-person meeting in chambers, and then a little time passes and we meet over at the transportation center and have an event there to recognize our board members present and past, and some volunteers, and it's a nice social gathering. And I think it's comes up on our agenda because you know, this is partly our role is to help engage our board members. So I think the question is whether we're doing it in person, and I thought that this sort of followed through with whether we're having a meeting in person in December in chambers. Do we have an update on that? I don't know. Actually, it's great that you're here, Kyle. These types of questions are are helpful for you to review too. But Cynthia, do we know if we're doing it in person or virtually?
I think that's really up to Kyle and the committee and the board. I mean, we do, we have a board meeting next week. If we were going to do something, we need to get invites out right after that to give people a month. If we were doing it on December 2nd, I know that, you know, Denise has ordered the food in the past. I think, I mean, one suggestion would be to do it a different day after winter welcome, because she has a lot of planning with that, but we could still do it this year, at least on the 2nd, after the board meeting. But I think your point, Frank, was that you wouldn't want to do one without the other in terms of in person versus not in person. That probably wouldn't be a great way to approach it. So.
Okay. So we can, as a agenda item, I think we have to, well, I guess we can discuss whether if we, as a board, decide to have an in-person event, in-person meeting in council chambers in December, that we should correspondingly have a gathering, social gathering afterwards. And we would still have our November meeting. Would that give us enough time to plan if we did it then? If we brought it up again?
I mean, it would give us a month. I mean, it would be great to get some feedback now if people are willing to do that. I mean, I think we can do it. It's, you know, Kathleen can do an invite fairly quickly.
Okay.
I mean, we control the space, so it shouldn't be an issue with the space. I do need to find out whether the council chambers is free for our regular board meeting. I'm gonna assume that it is, and I should have done that before this meeting, but let me, maybe I can send an email out to somebody over there and see what I can find out.
Well, let's take an informal poll with comment from this group that if we are to have a in-person meeting in December in council chambers, would people look favorably upon a social gathering afterwards? What do I take?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would love to. I guess the question I have is, do we have to have the board meeting in the council chambers in person? In other words, could we find a restaurant that has a private room that we could have the board meeting and then have the social gathering at the same place, rather than meeting at the council chambers, having the meeting and then going off to someplace else? I mean, it's mostly just a logistics thing. I think it makes it, if we have the board meeting and then have to move someplace else for the social gathering, gives people an opportunity to escape and not go to the social gathering, or vice versa. So I think if we can streamline both, and we might be able, in that instance, we might be able to start the board meeting a smidge later, have everybody come to one place at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, have the board meeting, and then go into something with appetizers, social, whatever. That's all I'm thinking, is we might be able to streamline it a little bit.
We could do it in the Nash Zimmer. We met in there before in June. This is the meeting where Larissa and Nora are coming back to us probably. Whether they're coming back to us in executive session is another question, Kyle, that we'll have to determine next week.
Yep.
That makes it a little more tricky, but we could do it. We just have to probably stage a few things outside, or it depends how long. I think usually we have the social at 6, if I'm remembering correctly. So we just have to think about timing. It may easily flow in. I mean, you want to give us at least a half hour for Denise and Kathleen and I to kind of reset the room, but it's not that hard. It's like taking the tables, moving. It's not that hard. I mean, if you're having drinks and things like that, that's a little more involved.
Right.
I mean, we've done it. We had Geno's did it 2 years ago, and we've had UConn do it before.
I think it's important to have a room that has a lot of space so that people like me that are a little nutsy about COVID can have distance, wear a mask, and feel comfortable and safe. I think it's hard to tell where COVID will be by that point in time. So it's almost kind of hard to plan in advance, although of course you have to for something like this. So, but whatever that's worth.
Diana?
Well, and I think if right now we plan with protocols in mind, whatever those protocols are with numbers and space and things, I think that's the best we can do, because it is nice, the thought of doing it. And, with the caveat of, we understand probably not as many people will come, which is understandable. And then if it does seem to be picking up, that extra caveat of, everybody needs to be comfortable there. I think it's nice to have it planned, to start trying to get back to some. And if it all looks good and things are going well before the holidays, as long as we're doing it safely. I mean, it will obviously have to be masked, because we're still in the mask mandate, right? I think for gatherings, aren't we?
So
The indoor.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have, if we're gonna have food, you'd have to, it's kind of like the
Right.
June meeting. I mean, although I don't think masks are required, that, I mean, that's another option, is going back to the Greek Center. That's a larger room. We
Right.
never get as many people because we don't invite as many people, because this is like a benefit, so to speak.
Right.
I mean, you could hold the board meeting in that back room, which I think maybe you guys did after.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
that's an idea too. I don't know if there's any restaurants that really would work well with the.
There might be a cost to that, or, what I mean?
Yeah.
That's anything to those, but if we could do the Greek Center is bigger. But I don't know that we'll get as many people as we get, even with the invites this year because of COVID. I think people are still
Right.
a little leery, but I like the idea of planning it. You know, and we see what happens. I mean, I think people are flexible with if it needs to change.
Mhm.
I like the concept. I like the, I think the intent was to do something, keep it close to downtown, so not going too far astray from our geographic hub. But I like the Greek Center too, just because it does have the space, and I like having that separate room that we met in afterwards. That seems sufficient for what we need to do as a board. And really, we don't have that many guests that come beyond the board. So if we're able to, you know, set something up separately in the larger hall for guests, and you know, we're all going to help the staff arrange things. If we could plan something, and Cynthia, would you mind just checking out to see if that's an option for
Yeah,
us?
yeah, I'll email Elias and start with him.
It's
Yeah.
also a good place, Frank, because of the parking. You know,
Yeah.
if the weather happens to be bad, which it can be, people won't have far to walk.
Right.
So that's a good point too, I think.
I think it is important for us to be trying to get together when we can, you know, but make everyone feel safe and still conduct business. So we're putting a lot of constraints here, but I think actually that makes it all. And I agree with what Kyle was saying too. Sometimes the transition from Chambers over to Nash Zimmer, you know, you could lose a couple people just in that. And, you know, this way we're a little bit more efficient with time too, moving things together. So if we could try that out, that'd be great. And then we can speak to this at the board meeting next week, as just sort of mark your calendar kind of thing, if we have approval for the meeting in person. Great. You see, Sean, is there anything more that you want to talk about, Cynthia, that we need to cover on that?
I don't think so.
Okay. Sean, I see you're sort of engaged, and because the next item was update on strategic plan. If you want, we can move to item number 7.
Yeah, would you mind? And I'll be back.
That's right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
This update on video promotion concept came up in a previous meeting. And so this is sort of some follow through. I don't know, Cynthia, can you provide some a little bit of more background on that?
Sure. So yes, as Frank said a couple of meetings ago, I'm not sure, Betsy, you might have brought it up. I can't remember now, but we had discussed the idea of potentially doing a video to promote Mansfield or promote downtown stores. And then we kind of talked about 2 different objectives. So one would be to bring in visitors, and the other would be to bring in businesses / developers. So it's almost 2 different videos.
Yeah.
So Frank and I talked about it last week, and my question was, you know, does this really fall into the governance committee? It doesn't seem like it does. And I think we talked about, is this another one where we look at the way we're looking at the business award program? It's kind of a little working group that might work on this. And I think I mentioned either at the board meeting or this meeting that we are, Kathleen Margaret, who's the communications person for the town and the schools, are looking into bringing on a media planner. So there's a little bit of overlap, although that would be townwide versus just downtown stores. So I think the suggestion was, if there's some interest from some board members or others, that we could do a working group and definitely bring in Kathleen, you know, And is this something we could do? How much would it cost? Is it worth it? Et cetera, et cetera.
So the appointment of an ad hoc committee to pursue this and I think, Cynthia, when we talked about the strategic plan and sort of seeing how things, the messaging that comes out of there for this video as well.
I think that's a good idea to have a committee with just one focus. Well, maybe two focuses if
Yeah.
we're gonna do two videos. Just, just working on that particular aspect of getting us out there and, getting more people to understand what it is that's there and what we're doing and those kinds of things. I think that's a good idea, rather than give it to a committee that's got other things on their plate that might be more of a priority at different times.
So it doesn't cross over with finance and growth. When the committees were structured, there used to be I thought it more of a marketing component, but it's not governance. Is it associated with finance?
Well, we did have an advertising and promotion committee.
Right.
So we had advertising and promotion, we had business development, retention, and we had membership development and planning and design. So all four of those committees went away.
Right.
And so there are some gaps that are starting to come up, as you might expect. And I think one thing, Frank, that we talked about that you brought up, is this something that Larissa and Noor, will they address in terms of governance? Will they suggest, well, you really need a committee on business, retention, et cetera, et cetera. And I think everybody's heard part of the reason we did this one was some of the mission for these committees were going away. And also to streamline the number of meetings to staff to do minutes. So I would suggest calling this like a working group or an executive director working group on blah, blah, blah. It just allows, there's still notes taken and things like that. But if we did something, it doesn't put us back into the 7-day notice and the 24,
Right.
which can get a little cumbersome. I'm just being blunt.
Yeah, I am sort of looking for guidance if, our committee is going to have to look at whatever recommendations come out of strategic planning about structure of committees, if there's anything proposed, because you're right, there's some gaps. So I don't want to build a separate structure and then have to undo it to fulfill what the strategic plan was. But this seems pretty straightforward. And even if it's just at this point, just a task force that is just getting the specifications around this and sort of and proposing a timeline that could be even brought to I guess at this point it would be brought to the full board. That would be helpful. So if that's the case, Cynthia, all you need is members, is that right? And an official charge for a task force?
Yes.
All right. We can, you and I can work on the charge, and if there's any volunteers that want to participate in this, they can also be involved in the committee charge as well in that development. Do we have any? Has anybody come forward that wanted to work on this?
No, but
So we'll
Boss seems like a good person.
Boss, you'd be fantastic. I know you got a lot. It's tough this year, this time of semester to be thinking about taking something more on, but that would be great. And you'd be working with Kathleen as a staff support.
Yes.
Okay.
Could I have an answer after next board meeting? Just I'm sure I would be able to. I just don't want to commit right now before just giving a little bit of time to think, if that works.
Yeah, you know what? That's fair. I'll let you think about it a little bit. Let's Cynthia, you and I can still start on the task force charge. right?
Yep.
And then we'll circulate that to you, Prabhas, and any other members who are interested in looking into this a little bit further. So we won't finalize the charge until we have a couple of members involved. Yes, Betsy, you volunteering too?
Probably the first thing to do is to decide what the task force is going to do. And then try to find people that have skills that would would support what you're trying to do.
Yep,
Just a thought.
that sounds good. I think well, let's bring something up in advance of the next board meeting, then we can shop it to a couple of people where we think that the charge is right. That would be helpful.
Yep.
All right. Future agendas. I know for items we have set meeting dates for the upcoming year. Can we add that to our November agenda? I don't think we have. I don't think we need to review updated board documents quite yet for out of the strategic planning committee. In the board trainings, I don't know if there's anything from the staff in terms of training and workshops, or even if that would come to us, or is this just for the board members?
This is just, we haven't been, I should say, I have not, I've sent you stuff about Connecticut Main Street webinars that are coming up.
Yep.
There's actually one Wednesday that I'm not sure I sent to you all. But I know I sent information on the last one, so it hasn't been super aggressive. It's more, here's something happening, you may be interested in listening. And I think after the last one, I sent you the PowerPoint or a link to the PowerPoint to look at, so,
Okay.
which may be easier for everybody.
Frank, when is our next meeting? I should have it, but I don't.
Governance,
Governance.
November 22nd.
Okay.
I mean, I can take that off. That's kind of a recurring future agenda if you want.
Yeah, that's fine. Sean, are you ready to provide an update on strategic plan?
Well, I can tell you what I know or think to be true. Thanks for your patience during this meeting. As you know, I wasn't able to participate, or maybe you don't know, I wasn't able to participate in the public meeting, unfortunately. So I'm going to turn the mic immediately over to Cynthia so that she can tell you in her own words how that went and some of the any remaining to-do items from that meeting.
Sure. So I think Frank and Diana listened in of this group. I think that's accurate. We did 3, so they gave the presentation that they had given to the board, and then had 3 breakout groups. And so Larissa Noor, or 4, I'm sorry, Larissa Noor, their colleague, and myself, we staffed those. So we had a set of questions, and they have done a overview of those, of the comments. Immediately after that, Kathleen put the survey up that Sean had suggested some time ago. And so that closes on the 27th. Right now, I think we have about 4 or so responses last time Kathleen looked, which I think was last week, the end of last week. So then at that point, Larissa and Noor will take a look at what's come in from the survey. Kathleen and I will put that together. And then they will likely start to close out the first phase, the assessment phase. Next week, I'm sorry, get my week straight here. Kyle and Sean and Ryan and Larissa and Nora and I are meeting to talk about the contract amendment that the board had approved at its last meeting. So they have provided some text to us in terms of what they see using the funds for. And so they need a Kyle and trying to think if Sean was on that at that meeting, request to come back and review that. And then they would start moving forward with developing draft strategies. And that's what the plan would be, to go to the board on the 2nd of December to get feedback from the board. And then after that, either in December or January, they would meet with 2 of our main property owners, Hart Realty Advisors and Oak Tree Capital, with a few board members to try to get buy-in to some of the strategies, which would include more involvement between the partnership board and those 2 property owners. I think that's it in a nutshell.
Were you pleased
We
with the
anticipate-
participation?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Were you pleased with the participation?
Yeah, I mean, we had 70 people actually RSVP, and we ended up with 40, which according to Nora is pretty typical. I mean, I don't know, Sean, I know you do a lot of these things, so I don't know if that's like a typical kind of drop off. I just haven't done these kind of meetings in a long, we did so many at the beginning of, developing the downtown. So, but yeah, it was a good range of ages and associations. So, like in my group, I had a former board member, I had a retired business owner, and I had a 30-year-old professional from UConn. So, I had they gave me a small group to be nice, because I got thrown into this at the last minute, which was fine. It was fun. I enjoyed it. So, so I think it was a good range of folks. So that I think I was happy with that. I mean, I think we did a pretty involved, we reached out pretty far, thanks to a lot of good advice and help from Sean. So.
Great.
Well, thanks, Cynthia. I mean, again, I'm well, you're going to give me heck if I apologize again for not being there, given what happened that day. But what pleases me is that we're able to, even if we had a third of that participation, we tried, right? Nobody should ever be able to criticize us for not trying to get that participation. And that was really what we were trying to do, is try to be as inclusive and embracive to the public input as possible. And so I feel that we can check that box. And to that end, if there's any sort of notification that we should do one final time on the survey, Cynthia, just as one final push, that'd be greatly appreciated as the lights go out.
No, that was good. I had a spirited breakout group, and I think there was some good input. Again, it was a very diverse, small group, but it was a diverse group, and it was very helpful. Made me think about it differently too. So this will you provide an update to the board meeting next week?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Anything else that we should consider for strategic plan or for governance committee this week?
So I'm not sure if Mario, he must have gotten tied up. I just keep looking over here to see if he's waiting here to come in, but I don't see him, Frank, and I don't have an email from him. So he must have gotten tied up with work.
Yeah, and I want to keep us within the hour limit here, so I didn't want to start into Mario too late in the meeting. So if we could ask him to, there's nothing urgent, but I found our time with Emily today very helpful in understanding the relationship between being a committee member, chair, hey Emily, being committee chair and sort of what we can do as a governance committee to help think about volunteers as a whole. There's only so many in Mansfield, right? And connected to the university and stuff, that we want to make sure that we're doing our best to coordinate this and help support our fellow board members in their roles. So thank you very much for coming today. With that, is there any, if there's nothing else from the group, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Betsy? You can't second too, Betsy. You trying to second too? Kyle is a second. You're on mute, Betsy.
Here.
What was
Okay.
that?
Did someone make the motion or did I?
You made the motion, Kyle seconded.
I made the
All
motion.
those in favor?
Thanks, Kyle.
Aye. Great to see you guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Take care, everybody.
I know.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.